Playing is something that we think kids just do naturally. But how do we grow our kids in their play as they mature? We're going to talk about that next on the Celebrate Kids podcast.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
Sometimes as parents, it's natural for us to just be okay with our kids playing all the time. And we grow with this because it gives us sometimes leisure in our homes. We provide different play activities for our kids that enable them to build independence and creativity and express themselves, and it's a really beautiful thing. But as our kids grow up, how do we work with them to build these understandings of play and maturity? And what does that involve for us as parents? These can be dark places for some families because we wrestle with finding the same thing to have leisure activities around. Well, today on the Celebrate Kids podcast in our daily segment, Facing the Dark, we're going to take on this issue of play and maturity head on as we explore some realities of the expansion in the popularity of chess for grade school and high school students. And then we're going to talk about how play should impact our families and how we should lead well with it as parents. So let's turn now to Dr. Kathy Cook. So Dr. Kathy, in late December, the daily user count for chess.com exploded again. Now, I didn't know if you knew this, but it exploded once before. And now they're finding out that chess is kind of a big thing. It hit a record 10 million users.
Wow.
I know, right? That growth has continued. And as of April, chess.com is averaging 12 million users a day. Chess.com doesn't track users' ages from what I can tell, but from what their staffers say, they say that this latest wave of fandom is dominated by high school and middle school students. Now, Dr. Kathy, I have to tell you, when I read this story, I kind of beamed a little bit because my kids totally were part of this wave. They have found a love for chess and they actually practice it, and they've been reading books on it, which I think might be maybe the nerdiest thing that they could do is read a book on how to play chess, but they're doing it and they're watching YouTube videos. It's dynamic, but they just want to beat their dad, I think. And sad to say they beat me after the second day, but I'd like to hear you kind of give some thoughts on this. What do you think about this finding?
Yeah, I'm excited because it's such an intellectual pursuit. It's so much better than games that, take time but don't expand our mental horizon at all. I know enough to know that kids should devote themselves to this and really do learn it and really strategize. What a great problem solving tool, right? Better than just about anything you can think of, I imagine. Memory and visual spatial, there's so many advantages to it. And you're doing it with somebody else, even if you're doing it on a device or somebody that you're competing against, I imagine. But yeah, I'm huge. I know that schools have chess clubs, and we have evidence that kids from less than ideal backgrounds can do very, very well. And it can be the thing that inspires kids to believe that their future can be brighter than they think it can be. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's one of the things that I'm old enough to remember maybe a couple of different waves of chess. I was actually kind of caught up in one in the mid-90s. But that's really the reality. There was kind of this pop culture push with the search for Bobby Fischer. And then in the 2000s, we had Can You Beat a Computer kind of push inside of this chess world. What do you think are entertainment or I like to think of these things kind of as exercise or things that we do that are fun. What do those things kind of say about us? Specifically, when you look at this chess thing, that there's this wave of people that are interested in it. What does that say about us when we take fun and entertainment and we kind of make it into these different things like these games that, in my opinion, are really hard to understand, have so many dynamics? What does that say about us?
Yeah, it's such a good question. What comes to mind is something that I teach in the context of one of my seminars in particular, and that is that we all do fun differently. I'll admit I don't enjoy chess. I don't enjoy thinking that hard about that. And I'm not very picture smart. And so I think that may be a reason. I have a hard time picturing what happens if I, move something here and there. There's just a lot of details to that game. And when I'm having fun, I don't want to think that hard. I think all the time, so I'll just admit that. I'm thinking as a speaker, I'm thinking as an author, and I have an analytic sequential brain that's, pretty much pumping out information. And I like that about myself. I'm very grateful God created me the way he did. And so I do fun differently. If somebody says to me, do you want to have fun? I'm sometimes tempted to say, what would you like to think about? Because thinking for me and brainstorming and dialoguing is fun. Some people are, have creativity and they want to color and design. And a lot of I like jigsaw puzzles. Other people want to go walk in the woods and, play in the dirt. So fun is critical. Play is critically important. But I think we need to honor everybody and allow them to do it differently. So as an example, if you and your wife had one or more kids in your family who did not want to participate in this chess thing, that would have to be okay with you. If it's a family value, and you would certainly want them to be exposed to it and give it a season, if you will. And then if it's just not something that, floats their boat and energizes them, but you see that it actually distracts them and is a negative weight, then I would hope that you guys would be able to say, hey, let's find something else for you to do in your spare time. So it is fascinating. Yeah, we need fun, we need play, and we need to give kids and adults permission to do things that are truly energizing and uplifting and not draining of their soul.
Yeah, I want to dive into that a little bit more because this idea of play is kind of a thing in our family. Some of my kids really love imaginative play. So they put themselves in a world, and all of a sudden they're fighting all of the imaginary bad guys in our community, and our community is totally safer for it, right?
I love it.
They love that. And I kind of look at it with fondness, and my wife thinks I'm a little bit weird, but that was my world when I was growing up. I was an imaginative kid. I loved imaginative play, even through junior high school. And it kind of led me to do different things, I think, and develop different muscles for what I do now. And it made me wonder, though, sometimes, because my wife and I have different perspectives on this. And I guess what I'm kind of asking is, how much do we encourage or guide our kids in their play? Like you said earlier, maybe it's a family value that we have board game night, but what if I have a couple of kids or a kid that doesn't really enjoy board games? Do I try to build that muscle in them? How much should we be guiding their sense of play and leisure as they work in these different things?
Yeah, I love that. I think, when we know our children, we should be able to predict who will enjoy this and who will enjoy that. And so then it's on us to find opportunities for each of our kids to find their happiness, if you will, their joy. There's games like Clue that are mysteries that involve some thinking and some mystery. And if you have kids who aren't problem solvers and aren't into that and they don't like it, that's okay. But you know what? They play it out of respect for their older brother who loves it. And then the older brother gets to play a game the next night that maybe is a different type of creativity. That would be ideal. In their younger years, you do a lot. You do a variety. You watch their attitudes, you watch their actions, and you start to make lists of the types of things that each of your kids enjoys. That helps you buy the right gifts, helps you, have the right type of parties to celebrate them. I think that when I look at play, I look at it this way: play now. We've got to let our kids play now. The world is spinning fast, and kids grow up quickly. And you know what I know, and that is there's fewer minutes in the day for play the older you get. Now, we all have to rest, and recreation's valuable, and hanging out with people matters. But you know what I mean by this. So let them play now. And I think we need to play with children. I'm a huge advocate of playing with children, whether that be, in the park or basketball or board games. One of the best things to do, in fact, is for everybody in the family to learn something new. Like the whole family goes to Topgolf and nobody's ever been. And now dad is just like the 16-year-old trying something new. Oh my goodness, the things you get to demonstrate to your kids about character in those moments. And then you play for the heart and you play for the mind. You play for the mind. So algebra is an example. So there are, my brother loves Sudoku. My brother is a clinical chemist. He's got a brilliant analytical mind for data, numbers, things like that. He plays Sudoku for fun. Oh my gosh, it's just marvelous. I watch him and I just snicker. My dad would love watching him do that. My dad would play it as well. And then there's play for the heart, for the attitudes and for relationships. And so maybe we make sure we have a balance of everything within our family. I hope that makes sense.
I think one of the things that Dr. Kathy said in this segment for me that really impacts me and how I parent is when she talked about doing something new with your family as a leisure activity. It's one of those modeling things that I don't really always pick up on, but I'm starting to realize is part of kind of the parental experience. It's part of the human experience of raising kids and being around and guiding kids. And I think if I have a perspective of how James talks about it in James 1, I might look at this issue of losing or of playing something new with my kids a little bit differently. And I want to share with you a little bit of what James writes in James 1, beginning at verse 2. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face many trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do. I think what James really kind of hits for me is the fact that many times play and leisure are actually kind of cross-training our minds, our bodies, maybe even sometimes our spirit or our soul to address the things that are happening later on in life, or maybe even real life situations from a different perspective. And in that cross-training, it produces different character traits that are necessary for us to have as we build into and live into the calling that God has for us in these cultural moments. So I hope that's an encouragement for you, that as you're living out and parenting and guiding young people, that you can celebrate the place that they're in by doing new things, doing hard things, and knowing that it's not necessarily about winning the game, but it might be about building a muscle that you're going to use later on. And also to show your kids and the kids that you're working with that building these muscles is joyful, and we can approach it with a good attitude, winning or losing, challenging or easy. And I think having this attitude when we look at leisure and different games that we bring into our family or around kids, that perspective can be a bright light in dark times. So on behalf of the Celebrate Kids podcast and Dr. Kathy Cook, my name is Wayne Stender. I want to say thanks for listening, and we're looking forward to seeing you here again tomorrow.